It was a time of violent oppression for blacks in the United States. A time when the Ku Klux Klan was determined to reestablish white supremacy. It was in these turbulent times 50 years ago that the civil rights movement was taking shape in the United States.
I think of that as the greatest social revolution this nation has ever gone through. It was a great reformation, a great revolution. We don't realize how different life is today.
And when Jacob Tanzer was a young man, he became a part of that social revolution while working as a lawyer at the Department of Justice under Bobby Kennedy. Things became heated in the South. On June 16, 1964, the Mount Zion Baptist Church in Neshoba County, Mississippi, was burned to the ground after members of their black congregation decided to participate in voter registration activities. On June 21st, 3 young civil rights activists, Michael Schwerner, James Chaney, and Andrew Goodman, visited that church while working to register blacks to vote in Mississippi. These 3 young men were shot and killed by the Mississippi White Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Things had taken a violent turn. Justice needed to be served.
And it was decided that they would call a grand jury to look into it. And they needed a grand jury expert, and so I went for it. When I heard that, I went to my boss and volunteered immediately. I wanted to go down there. And I joined the civil rights team as their grand jury expert.
So Jake went to Mississippi as the grand jury expert. First stop, the remains of the Mount Zion Baptist Church.
There was this level area full of ash. And what I remember of it in my mind was that it was burnt totally. And there was a little cement staircase, maybe 3 steps, leading up to the porch that made me think of a tombstone in front of it. And we just stood there silently, staring at it, lost in our own thoughts. And it became very important that we solve the case and that we prosecute it right and that we get a result. We had to.
While in Neshoba County, Jacob walked through fields and knocked on doors to gain the trust of potential witnesses and learn what they might have witnessed leading up to the murders of the young activists.
What had happened had been that the Klan, the sheriff, etc., had learned that Schwerner, Chaney, and Goodman had been trying to organize voting registration at the Mount Zion Church. And this was a grave offense. I cannot recite the evils of Jim Crow, but voting was an emotional issue for the white community and for the sheriffs and law enforcement and the Klan. And the enforcement of that unwritten code was brutal and violent and certain.
Bud Cole and his wife Beatrice, Mount Zion church members who supported the voter registration program, were the first witnesses Jacob spoke to.
Would you be willing to tell this to a grand jury? You're going to have 23 people, probably all white, sitting around listening to you, and they're not going to be very happy to hear what you have to say. Can you do that? He said, yes. I said, are you sure? He said, yes, I'll do that. And I said, why? And he said to me, it's verbatim, all them boys tried to do was to help us.
Jacob continued to search for witnesses. He met with others who had been in jail that night with the slain civil rights workers. They too agreed to testify. In total, 125 witnesses testified, telling moving stories of torture, harassment, and abuse by local law enforcement. As murder was a state crime, Jacob needed to come up with the basis for a federal indictment, and he did.
Denial of constitutionally guaranteed rights without due process by a public official, the irony of ironies. There was no way we could have gotten a conviction in 1964. But by 1967, the establishment attitude had changed. And there was an integrated jury, and 7 of the people indicted were found guilty and went to prison.
These were the first civil rights criminal indictments ever. It was a turning point in American history.
But my point is hope. It feeds on hope. And the little victories brought hope. Each one did.
Tonight we celebrate Jacob Tanzer, who brought hope to the people of Mississippi. Hope that helped fuel the civil rights movement. We are grateful and proud to honor this Oregon man who stood up for justice in Mississippi and America.